The hotel looked like all the other big hotels around here. It was trying hard to be a 5-star, but was no match for the elements. One too many rainy seasons had dulled and dented its mirrored exterior. The heat seeped in from outside, overwhelming the air conditioning. The lobby's mahogany-looking floors were actually cheap linoleum that had buckled in the humidity. Mold crept along the edges of the walls. It was early 2016, but the music blaring out of the speakers was a mix of Elton John and Billy Joel and Sting, an easy-listening soundtrack apparently meant to soothe the harsh realities behind the lobby's glass doors. I had been living in the region for only a few weeks when I shipped out for one of my first assignments as West Africa bureau chief for the New York Times. 15 hours of airplane and car rides later, I arrived in the muggy southern tip of Nigeria, deep in the country's oil-rich Niger Delta, tucked right in the geographic middle of the continent's armpit. My plan was to talk to residents about the damage a group of militants had done as they blew up oil pipelines in a country that relied on oil proceeds to pay for almost everything in its budget. I was waiting to see Peter, a local journalist who was my fixer, the savvy, street-smart, on-the-ground operator who arranges interviews and guides international reporters through and, importantly, out of unfamiliar areas. In his prime, Peter had led other reporters across some of Nigeria's roughest spots. Now he was almost 60 and nearing the end of his journalism career. He wore striped golf shirts that didn't quite cover his potbelly. His thick, black-rimmed glasses magnified his eyes. The first time I worked with him, he had to be roused from his bed half-drunk and nearly missed an assignment. New to the job, I didn't know anyone else more qualified. I hired him to take me to the Delta. The Niger Delta is a dangerous corner of the world in a dangerous corner of the world, where militants were making a sport of taking foreigners for ransom. I didn't want to be one of those people who worried about getting kidnapped just because they wandered into new places without understanding them. But around here, that fear seemed legitimate. The local papers were reporting new kidnappings every month. Peter might have caved to the occasional bender, but he knew the region well. I was pretty certain he wasn't going to get me kidnapped, at least not intentionally. In the city of Warri, at the hotel check-in desk, foreign refinery workers from Chevron, Shell, and other big oil companies were checking out. Their lives were calculated to be at risk, and their corporate overlords were bringing them home. The people blowing up the oil pipelines were the newest generation of militants who, in the past decade, had been prowling the Delta's web of mangrove-lined creeks armed with dynamite. The government for years had honored a deal that paid them to stop, but a new president was threatening to cut off the payments. Attacks were ramping up. Before I could even set down my bags in my hotel room, Peter called my cell. "There's someone here to meet us," he said. "Come to the lobby." I didn't realize we had a meeting scheduled. I grabbed my notebook and rushed to the lobby, where a Celine Dion song was blaring from the speakers now. I spotted Peter and another round-bellied man wearing a beret who motioned for me to sit down in a corner near the bar. Peter introduced us. The man, Victor, was from a place called Ugboradu, one of the communities deep in the Delta's miles of skinny, vein-like waterways that curl around specks of islands before spilling into the Atlantic. Ugboradu was across the water from a giant, gleaming Chevron natural gas terminal, a miles-long space station monstrosity that was itself a modern city, complete with its own air-conditioned apartments and airstrip. Victor began telling me of his village's misery. Their biggest concern wasn't the terrorists. Years of careless oil company drilling and transport had time and again spilled Exxon Valdez-sized amounts of oil into the water. No one properly cleaned it up. People were so poor they were forced to dine on the fish they pulled from polluted swamps. Most everyone in his community was unemployed, yet the oil and gas companies imported workers from abroad. Those corporations were earning billions at the expense of Victor's people. They lived in tin shacks with no electricity and shared a single, shabby outhouse propped up in the middle of a murky lagoon. This is going to be an important story, I thought. Maybe Peter wasn't so bad after all. The lobby music was overpowering the conversation. I leaned closer to catch each of Victor's eloquent, pained words, trying to ignore the sting song now blaring in my ear. The president can't turn his back on the Niger Delta. This region lays the golden egg for the rest of the country. You could say I lost my faith in the people on TV, Sting sang. Our land is polluted. Agriculture no longer thrives, Victor said. You could say I'd lost my belief in our politicians. They all seemed like game show hosts to me, Sting wailed. I turned around to look for a bartender to lower the volume of the stupid music. Dionne, Peter shouted, probably for the third time. I snapped my head toward him. A dozen men in grubby jeans and tight t-shirts were standing in front of me.